to move forward, I am going to just ask you a couple questions. Give me 1 second. So give me one, share a tab. All right. So we're going to use the chat for a similar process. Go ahead, think about what did you learn from yesterday? Tell us one new thing you learned, and you can go ahead and type it in the chat first. So what is the one thing you learned from yesterday? Feel free to type it in the chat to get started. Okay, so I noticed there are more of you who are participating, so I really enjoy it. But I also realize it's a lot of the same people. I'm not saying you cannot participate. You should feel free to continue to participate, but I think it's a great opportunity for those who have not tried to speak out loud, because this is a great opportunity you have. And I think Ava and I are here to help you practice as much as we can. We're not here to criticize you or anything like that, right? So think about answering this question. What did you learn from yesterday? Tell us one new thing you learned. So go ahead and type it in the chat first. So I'll give you a little bit more time. I'm going to turn off my camera real quick so I can eat something really quick, but I'll give you a little bit more time.
So maybe I can give a little bit of a refresher on what we learned yesterday. I presented and I gave my journey, and Lynn's friend came, Michael, and he also gave a little bit insight into his journey. You guys were asking questions about college and how it feels to be a college student. So maybe if you remember what questions were asked, what you learned, you can put that in the chat and you guys can practice.
I swear yesterday when I logged in, you guys were talking about fraternities and sororities. So think about what you learned yesterday. I believe Ava talked about going to the community college, transferring to UCSD. I think Michael almost talked about architecture, his experience at UC Berkeley. So think about what you learned from yesterday. I just want you to list one thing. Just one per person.
So, Mr. 22, can you please say that out loud?
Okay. Um, I um, there's few people joining a fraternity or sorority, and it's not as many college students joining as we saw in some American movies. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, that was really interesting to see your guys' perspective on that. Because I guess when you live in America, you kind of know, obviously, you dream of college, and when you get there, it's a little bit like, oh, it's not exactly the same as I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I didn't know. I thought also that a lot of people joined fraternities and sororities. And then I got to college, and that wasn't the case at all. So, you, Xuan, I hope I said that right, but can you please say your sentence out loud?
Um, I learned that UC Berkeley is said to be a good school for studying English or humanities.
Yes, I remember answering your question yesterday. I was looking it up for you as I went. I was like,
Yeah,
oh, let me just
thank you.
help her out real quick. But I would look up more because I know Berkeley's really good, but I'm sure other schools that are not even in California were also listed, like Yale and Stanford and so forth, like Columbia. These schools were also listed. So I would recommend looking it up.
Yeah, but they all seem really hard to get into.
Yeah, that's true.
But I also want to say though, so I guess it's good that you're bringing this up, right? Like good, right? The definition of good. So I'm going to put on my counselor hat and talk a little bit about good, right? So when I was younger, when I was like, I don't know, Ava's age, probably early 20s, I transferred to UC Berkeley not because I really wanted to study in social welfare. I transferred to UC Berkeley because of the name of UC Berkeley, right? I just knew it was like, oh, it's the number one public institution in the United States, or we can argue in the world, whatever. But anyways, so I chose that school, not because like social welfare is really what I was interested in. It was more like, oh, it's a really good school. Like, my mom should be proud of me because I chose that school, right? Um, Again, I'm not trying to say I did not like my experience. I enjoy my experience a lot. It was very challenging, but it was also a very good experience for me as a person because I moved out. I typically live in Southern California in the Los Angeles area, and when I moved to UC Berkeley, it was at least like 6 to 8 hours away, right? So I have to like not live at home. I lived in the dorms. I had a roommate. So I think about the experience as great, but it's not so much because it was like the number one school, right? But it was a good fit in terms of like I really needed to not live at home and to grow as a person, right? So again, what I'm trying to say is that you can go to any college and any university and still be able to study humanities or English, even though it's not ranked number one or ranked number 10, whatever on the list. You're still going to have a great experience because going to college is more than the rankings of it, right? Going to college is about the experience. It's about the friends you make. It's about the relationship you build with your professors, with your teachers, with your advisors, or just even like I described, it's just me growing up, like enjoying that experience, right? So again, I just want to kind of like I just want to encourage you, Sean, to also like look at other school. Who cares if it's not listed number one or number 20, right? Because it's more than the rankings. It's more than that. Like look at the environment. Is it in a city that has a lot of diversity? Is the school that you're going to offer internships? Do they offer fellowships? Do they offer scholarships for international students? Those are all things to look at in addition to, is it on the number one list, right? So, so that's just me speaking as a counselor, because I know oftentimes as we think about college, that's what students think about. Like, what is the best college for blah, 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 right? But best is different for everyone, because best for you is not the best for me, and may not be the best for Ava. So all of us have a different definition of best. Sorry for my soapbox. And thank you for participating, though. So anyone else, anything else that you learned from yesterday? How to deal with the school fee. What did you guys talk about yesterday about school fees? Did you guys just pay it, or what did you guys talk about, Ava?
So Michael went into a little bit of how he had a loan when he was at Berkeley. And I kind of talked about how if you're not really sure about what you want to do, it's probably best to go to a community college if you're worried about like money, especially since it's just cheaper.
Yeah.
So that's what we talked about on that front.
Yeah, definitely. But I also think it's very important that like you guys are aware. Like I think Michael, myself, and Ava were lucky because we are California residents, right? So as California residents, we do not pay the same fees as an international student, right? So unless you do have like residency for California, then your classes are going to be a lot more expensive than, how my fee was and Michael's fee was, and even Ava's. Like, I'm sure your tuition is a lot more expensive now, but it's probably like a fraction of how much international students would pay. All right, so new entrance exam. You guys learned about the SAT and the ACT. Very cool. Mingyan, you want to go ahead and read yours? Because yours is like much longer.
Okay. After listening to the experiences of Ava and Michael, probably I understand that when you first enter university, you will face a strange environment and unfamiliar people. Indeed, you will be a little nervous at the beginning, but as time passes, you may naturally blend into it. These are my guesses. Don't take it too seriously. After all, I haven't experienced this yet.
Okay, but I think you're right. And I think it's okay to say this is what you think. And this might be culturally different. I don't know how it is in Taiwan, but in the United States, people are definitely encouraged to speak up, and it's okay to have an opinion. So it's okay to say, this is what I believe in. So it's totally okay. So it's okay to speak your truth, even though you have not experienced it, but you heard it from Ava and Michael. So that's okay. Yeah, and I agree, actually. So I think that's anywhere you go, right? It's not just college. When you start a new job, or when you go to an unfamiliar place, is always nerve-wracking. You're a little unsure. You don't know if you'll have friends. You don't know if people will make fun of you. So all that, right? So it's a lot of emotions running through. But I think just like anything, you get used to it eventually. So good job. Anyone else would like to share before I move on to the next slide? So I'm just going to give like maybe just 1 minute, see if there's any additional answers. So you guys learned a lot. You guys learned from the entrance exam. You guys learned about fees, tuition. You guys learned about the social life, fraternity and sororities. You guys learned about how sometimes it might be uneasy to make that transition. Okay, so since I don't see any additional comments, so I'm going